Hi, ArcfieldWeather.com meteorologist Paul Doreen here on Thursday morning, January the 25th. An interesting weather pattern going forward. We certainly have the chance for rain changing to snow in much of the Mid-Atlantic region late Sunday night time frame going into Monday morning. Certainly interior, higher elevation locations can see a changeover to snow, maybe even all the way into the I-95 corridor region. We'll talk about that system here over the next several minutes. And first I wanted to start off here with a look at the U.S. temperatures for the month of January so far. It's still kind of an interesting pattern in that the warmer than normal conditions are kind of confined to the northeastern part of the nation. Right here you see, especially across the state of Maine. Again, this is from January 1st all the way out to January 23rd. The nation as a whole, up to this part of January, below normal on the order of 3.84 degrees below normal across the nation, and the coldest relative to normal out across the heartland here in the middle of the nation, up across the interior northwestern part of the nation. Really, that extends all the way down into the southeastern part of the U.S. So still below normal. That could change with this very mild weather pattern of the last couple of days, and certainly the next couple of days as well change into a more positive direction here. But for now, the first 3 weeks or so of January, below normal on average across the nation. Well, before we get into the details of that weekend system that again could become a rain changing to snow scenario across much of the Mid-Atlantic region, especially the interior higher elevation locations, let's kind of take a look at the longer term here. This is a forecast map from last night's operational run, the 0Z run of the Canadian model. Total precipitation amounts over the next 10 days. Quite interesting in that this part of the nation, the lower Mississippi Valley and much of the southern part of the nation, gets inundated with rain over the next few days. It has already been swamped with some rainfall over the last few days, and this is the same part of the country, we'll see in a moment here, that has suffered through drought conditions over the last few months. So a lot of welcome rainfall here in that part of the country. Now the west coast, all the way from California to British Columbia in Canada, including Washington and Oregon, will get bombarded by storm after storm over the next couple of weeks. It really gets kicking into gear next week and goes into the following week. A very, very powerful Pacific Ocean jet stream will flow lots of moisture from west to east across the Pacific Ocean into the U.S. West Coast, into the southwestern part of Canada. Now, in those higher elevation locations, such as the Sierra Nevada, that will result in a lot of snowfall over the next couple of weeks. So the stormiest part of the nation may very well be the U.S. West Coast, all the way up into southwestern Canada, and in the longer term and in the short term, continuation of some heavy rainfall across the lower Mississippi Valley. Now, let's clear the deck here and kind of compare this particular part of the nation in terms of rainfall over the next 10 days to the drought map here, the drought conditions. And notice right in this part of the nation where there is some severe drought conditions here, that is where indeed Mother Nature is balancing things out with a tremendous amount of rainfall. Again, places like Louisiana and Mississippi suffering from very dry conditions over the last few weeks. That'll certainly be alleviated with this week's rainfall. Well, let's now go through some of the forecast maps from last night's operational run of the GFS here. This is the 850 millibar temperature anomaly map with a North America view from the 0Z run. And really a couple things I want to point out over the next several days. What is quite interesting indeed, there'll be tremendous amount of cold air, colder than normal air over Alaska, and a lot of warmer than normal air across western Canada. And there'll be quite a battle in that part of North America going forward. So just kind of want to focus on, we'll kind of go quickly through this. And indeed, this very cold air over Alaska is kind of bottled up right now. Can't make its way down into the U.S. There's too much of a Pacific Ocean flow into the west coast of Canada, into the west coast of the U.S. Again, very, very cold air indeed exists on the North America side of the North Pole, but it's kind of bottled up right now over Alaska, and at the same time, much milder conditions relative to normal. It's still cold there, but relative to normal, much warmer than normal conditions here across Canada. This is the latter part of the upcoming weekend. Again, much below normal Alaska, much above normal Western Canada, and we'll just kind of move forward here and kind of focus on these two areas. Big time differences. Then when we get into February, here's where the overall weather pattern kind of starts to change again, and we can get some of that cold air that was bottled up in Alaska to start to make a move. You can kind of see here starting to make a move to the south end east. This is all the way out to the end of the first week in February. This is when the overall pattern may result in colder than normal conditions again for the central and eastern U.S. You can see by the end of this time period, we're all the way out now, a couple of weeks down the road here, that cold air, well below normal air that was bottled up over Alaska certainly starts to make a move to the south and east as a result of some pattern changes in the overall wind flow across North America. So a lot of interesting things going on. You'll hear a lot about very warm conditions in Canada and very cold conditions in Alaska, and you'll certainly hear a lot about atmospheric rivers related to the stormy pattern headed to the U.S. West Coast. Now let's kind of focus in on the threat for the late weekend in the northeastern part of the nation. Again, it looks like a rain to snow type of scenario setting up. Certainly accumulating snow is a possibility on the table for some interior higher elevation locations of the Mid-Atlantic region that could even extend all the way down to the I-95 corridor region, certainly suburbs to the north and west of Philly and New York City. Maybe even D.C. can get in on some of that action in relationship to the snow, but it's still too far away to say for certain about that. Let's take a look at the 500 millibar height anomaly pattern across the nation here using the 0Z run of the Canadian model, and we'll just push forward here into the upcoming weekend and talk about the overall pattern here. And it's very interesting indeed. It's not too often that you see this kind of a pattern here where you have upper level ridging basically surrounding a vigorous upper level low right in this region right here. And this is Sunday morning's forecast map, and this tells me a couple of things right off the bat. When I see a pattern like this, again, it's somewhat unusual that you have high pressure ridging kind of surrounding this bowling ball coming across the nation here, this upper level low. First of all, kind of suggests to me that the surface low may initially head up into the Ohio Valley, but low pressure areas like to go to the path of least resistance, and that is not going to be all the way up into this strong upper level ridge that's poking into the southeastern part of Canada. That is likely not going to happen with that strong ridge. More likely, this initial low will move up a little bit into the Ohio Valley and then start to weaken, basically transfer its energy to low pressure that will form right along the Mid-Atlantic coastline. I talked about the path of least resistance. This is kind of a favored area for low pressure to develop because there's a kind of a natural, what we call baroclinic zone or a temperature gradient right along the eastern seaboard this time of the year with the still relatively warm waters of the western Atlantic contrasting with the cold land conditions. The snow is pretty much gone, but still the ground is pretty cold, and it certainly sets up a contrast right along the coastal region between temperatures that are probably mid to upper 40s in much of the western Atlantic Ocean and a much colder ground here. So this is kind of a natural area for low pressure to develop this time of the year. So indeed, it would be unlikely that this initial low pressure area would work its way all the way into that upper level ridge, kind of being blocked there. So energy will transfer here. It will end up being the main player is low pressure right along the Mid-Atlantic coastline. Now let's clear the deck here and go a little bit forward in time. Again, this upper level low is not going to go up to southeastern Canada with that strong ridge poking in there. Rather, it'll be kind of forced to the east-northeast, and again, by late Sunday night, early Monday morning, we will have strong low pressure right about in this region right here off the Mid-Atlantic coastline. Well, let's take a look at the surface forecast maps from the same 0Z run of the Canadian model. A lot of wet and mild conditions across the Mid-Atlantic region, and that has resulted in a lot of dense fog over the last 24 hours or so. Continuation today and tonight of some patchy fog in the Mid-Atlantic region. Much of the snow has already melted. Any snow that remains is liable to be gone by the end of tomorrow. Temperatures will surge on Friday in places like DC to 65 degrees or so. Philly maybe 60 degrees or so. New York City is kind of a tough call. I think they may stay on the north side of a frontal system, on the cool side of a frontal system on Friday, so they may not enjoy that surge in temperatures in the I-95 corridor region of the Mid-Atlantic. Now, let's move forward here. Kind of multiple waves of low pressure pulled out of the Gulf of Mexico over the past couple of days, producing lots of rainfall down in that lower Mississippi Valley that was suffering through drought conditions in recent months. That has been alleviated for sure over the past couple of days and the next couple of days. Here we go now into Friday, and there may be a little bit of rain Friday morning in places like DC, Philadelphia, but it likely moves away Friday afternoon. There could even be some brightening skies, and again, 65 degrees is a possibility in DC, 60 degrees in Philadelphia on Friday afternoon with those brightening skies. And then we deal with the next storm system, and as we mentioned earlier, that initial wave of low pressure heads north and east up across the Tennessee Valley into the Ohio Valley region as of Sunday morning. It is very unlikely at this point to continue to move in this direction. Take a look at what's going on right here. We have very strong high pressure at the surface starting to build into southeastern Canada. That is an important player. That will act as a source of cold air for this late weekend system. There will be a lot of cold air situated right over the southeastern part of Canada with this high pressure area building into that region, and it can get wrapped into the system. It is likely to get wrapped into the system. Cold air moving in from the north and northwest, causing a changeover from rain to snow in many parts of the Mid-Atlantic region. Let's move out a little bit farther in time, and here you go. That initial push northward into the Ohio Valley kind of stops in its advance because of this high pressure, not only at the surface but aloft as well. Very, very strong high here over southeastern Canada. Anybody who's watched my videos, especially during wintertime in the last few years, know that I really focus in on the high pressure system over southeastern part of Canada whenever it comes to the possibility of snow in the I-95 corridor region. So ultimately we end up with low pressure just off the Mid-Atlantic coastline instead of over the Ohio Valley. Kind of shifts its energy to the natural baroclinic zone, that temperature gradient over the coastal waters of the Mid-Atlantic region. Here we go by Sunday night. Very strong high pressure to the north, a lot of cold air, and it starts to get wrapped into the system here in this fashion here. And right off the bat here you see some blues showing up here by Sunday evening, and that is with that colder air kind of wrapping into the system. We'll go out a little farther in time, and this will drive south and east, and it looks like interior sections across, let's say, the Lehigh Valley, northeastern PA, central PA, quite likely to change over to accumulating snow. It's also possible that some of that changeover slides all the way to the south and east into the suburbs of Philadelphia, New York City, maybe even some of the suburbs of DC late Sunday night. This is late Sunday night now, an intensifying low off the Mid-Atlantic coastline. A lot of cold air just to the north. Here we go a little farther in time, and it's at this time late Sunday night, early Monday morning, where you could get some snow all the way into Philly area, New York City, maybe even far northern western suburbs of DC. That is less likely, but it's still on the table, and potentially some accumulating snow in this area as well, all the way from southeastern PA across upstate New Jersey, across southern part of New England, late Sunday night, early Monday morning. Still a few days to go. This is something we'll focus in on over the next couple of days. And again, it does not move all the way up the New England coastline because of that strong ridging to the north, but rather it takes kind of an east-northeast move here out. And look at how it intensifies by the time we get to Monday evening, all the way down to 987 millibar low. After that, we'll have to watch for a couple of systems that might drop southeast from the southeastern part of Canada across the Great Lakes, and potentially could bring some snow to portions of the northeastern states by the middle part of next week. So something we'll monitor also over the next several days. But in the meantime, to summarize, stormy pattern setting up for the U.S. West Coast, southwestern part of Canada, multiple storms over the next couple of weeks, really focused on next week into the following week. A lot of rain the last couple of days and the next couple of days over the south central states, alleviating drought conditions from the past couple of months. And in the Mid-Atlantic region, quite a decent event coming late in the weekend and the early part of next week. Rain changing to snow scenario is certainly on the table for Sunday night going into Monday morning, and interior higher elevation locations of the Mid-Atlantic quite likely to get accumulating snow in that particular storm system. That's it for now. For ArcfieldWeather.com, this has been meteorologist Paul Dorian.